So welcome to the talk. We're going to talk about Overture data. Reasoning behind when I first proposed this talk was, I think a lot of people have seen the blog post, heard a lot about it, maybe look at the blog post, never go any farther, or maybe go a little bit farther, and then they see, I have to go to an S3 bucket and read all these Parquet files. What? Never mind, forget it, I'm done, right? Like, I'm not touching it. So this is more about trying to get people what's in it, why you should care, what's the goal of it, and then show you some demos. And I'm Steve.
I'm Jennings. I'll be doing the demos after Steve talks about this.
Jennings said nothing, that political part I said in the beginning had nothing to do with, because he's actually like a member of the Overture Map Foundation. So had nothing to do with Jennings. We didn't talk about it before, and he's probably like, oh my God, I can't believe he's saying that. Again, this URL is to the slide deck, and there's a bunch of links in the slide deck that you might want later. And I put the link on the last slide too, so we can repeat it again. All right, everybody got the pictures that want a picture at this point? So let's get started. The agenda for today: intro to the Overture Map Foundation. What's their goal? What you can do with the data, and then see the data, and then how you can incorporate it into your workflow. And the animations didn't come through. So that's it. That's the agenda. Any questions on the agenda? Sorry, it was supposed to be animated, but it didn't make it. All right. So I'll let you read the slide, because that's what people do when you put all the bullet points up at once. Quickly read the slide. I'm not going to talk while people are reading. We're not multitaskers. That's why you should animate your slides, just so you know. If you have bullet points, animate them. You're like, shut up, I'm trying to read. Okay, everybody done? Good. All right, so the reasons why it came into existence, I would say, is big and small, mostly big. Corporations are all building maps of the world, right? Once Google showed that you could do it with Android devices and start building a new map of the world, and you didn't have to buy it from Navtech and you didn't have to buy it from TeleAtlas, everybody started saying, oh, well, we need our own map, because maps are really important and we want to own it and we don't want to pay Google for forever for it. So everybody started making their own maps. What ended up happening is we have a whole bunch of wasted effort, because people are doing the same thing over and over again in different companies. So rather than making the best, we're just making a bunch that some are better than others in certain places, and it's really frustrating. And there's no alignment, right? So like if I give you the idea about, where did I go to? The Field ice cream parlor that was over there. If I give it to you in Bing Maps, it's going to have a different ID than if I did it in Google Maps, than if I did it in Foursquare. So you have no idea of knowing, is this the same thing, right? You can't tag anything to it. And then, which brings to this point, which is conflation, which means like bringing the same things together to be the same thing, right? And global IDs for features is really hard and really expensive, and maintaining history of that ID and that entity over time is really hard and really expensive, and nobody really wants to take that on by themselves. And again, it all comes down to the base map data. Most of the companies are not competing on their base map data. It's not like, ooh, you have better base map data than I. It's, I put interesting things on top of that base map data, and that's why you want to use us. So they said, hey, or a lot of people said, we need a Linux kernel for geospatial data. And voila, that's what we have. So the Overture Map Foundation is a Linux project, right? And so just like the Linux kernel, nobody owns it, right? There's all different contributors. And just like the Linux kernel, people who are members have to contribute, or at certain level members, have to contribute FTEs, engineers, to the project, and those engineers do the project on the work, right? So it's, if you think of the Linux kernel, just think, instead of building a Linux kernel, you're building map data for the world, okay? And anybody can be involved, just like the Linux kernel. This is the Overture Map Foundation. I'm gonna let you I'll read it aloud while you guys go along. This is kind of like book on tape reading the book. Founded in 2022 under the Joint Development Foundation, Overture is dedicated to the development, and this is the important part, reliable, easy to use, and interoperable open map data that will power current and next, whatever. We build this data through a collaborative process that combines technology data and support from a wide range of companies and open geospatial data sources, okay? So that's their aim. There's nothing about world domination. There's nothing about making it exclusive, right? It's all released. Is it an OpenDB license? I think what is the license themes? Oh, it depends on the theme, right? Because of the data they mix in. They're respecting licenses. Here are the members that we can publicly talk about, right? So you can see some of the big ones up there. You can see another big one up there. Boo, sorry. And then you can see a whole bunch of other ones that are participating as well, right? So one of my favorite is that Niantic is participating. Do you know who Niantic is? Yeah, but before Pokemon, what was it? I'm an old schooler. What? Ingress, exactly. That's how Pokemon had gyms, because Ingress people did the work for them. Anyway, so I'm really excited that Niantic's in there. It's just really, it's a great, and here's me, a humanitarian OpenStreetMap team as well, right? So it's not just corporations. So it's a broad array of people. And these are mostly smaller companies at the bottom, but they want to be, there's bigger companies too, but they haven't agreed to have their logo put up. So the biggest goal is GERS, and GERS stands for Global Entity Reference System. Global Entity Reference System, right? What Jennings said. So this is unique IDs for every geographic feature we can identify that we care to identify on the Earth. So once we identify the Hyatt at St. Louis Arches, it's always the same ID, even if the name changes. And that's the important part. The name can change. It's that this thing that we've identified will always have the same ID. It's basically a primary key, trying to guarantee a primary key from here until the end of time for that geographic entity, right? And I'm not going to go into the whole thing about it because, as the taskmaster says, we only have 25 minutes. So that's why I said you wanted to go to the link. If you want to read more about GERS and what they're trying to do, this is probably the hardest part of the Overture Map Foundation, right? And this is why they're trying to get governments involved, because that's some of the best places to get this stuff from.
Well, was it out down going?
No, go. Oh, what if they knock down the building and put something else there? I would assume that, I'm assuming, I haven't told this, yeah, the new thing gets a new ID, is what I would assume.
Yes, if they've been talking after the goals, you continue to build it, but how would be different? You got the
Yeah, I did do some, I did do some consulting work for the Overture Map Foundation, working on their transportation data pipeline. And you should see the very interesting discussions that come up. Like, so I'm usually a GIS practitioner, or most of you like GIS practitioners and don't work for like large corporations, right? And it's a totally different world when you talk to them about what they care about and what they're doing with things compared to, I just want to draw a boundary of my county and show all the fire hydrants are, right? Like, that's the stuff I care about. But when these people are dealing with different things. So it's really actually quite interesting if you have the time to like join in, and we'll get to that at the end. What's in it? So let's see what they have, right? I'll show you here. There's another link here. This is the guides. So the guides actually tell you the different sources that are in it. There's addresses, there's buildings, there's places. Does everybody understand the difference between buildings and places? A place can be a building, but a building can be a place, but not all places are buildings, right? And then base. So this is just like, I hate this. This is, you can tell this is basically from the big map providers. Just consider these letters base. But land use, land cover, and water features, I don't consider those base. For some of us, those are like the most important things we actually want to map. Shouldn't be called base, should be called natural resources or something like that. And human-built structures. Divisions, this is all administrative boundaries as much as they can get their hands on. Hierarchically ordered, where they can hierarchically order them, and you'll see how that comes up in the data later. And then transportation. And this is like real. Have any of you ever worked with the old school NAVTAC or Tally Atlas data? Tried to use that transportation network? That's what this kind of data is like. This isn't the data that you're getting from your local county that says, this is the name of the road, and here's its length. It's got like if you're gonna you can use it to do mapping, basic mapping, but if you want to do any analysis and stuff with it, you really need to actually take a look at it, okay? It's not as easy or simple, I should say. It's not as simple as you're used to for most GIS stuff. Let's see. Oh, and then I wanted to go back to this one. So this is the mix of sources. I'm not gonna go through all of them, but they do a really thorough job of attribution and licensing. So your ability to use different data depends on which data set you're using and where that data came from. They're collecting it. They're not guaranteeing that you have the ability to do whatever you want with it. Does that make sense? All right, so if you don't want to be in violation, I assume you should, I'm going to suggest you go look at all these different, what you're using and who gave it to you and what their license is for using that data. Because they're not really creating de novo data, right? They're just taking other data and bringing it together so that I bet if they had their own data, it would be some OpenDDB license, right? But it's not. So you have to look at the rest. Any questions on that? Okay. The parts that are new to you, it's schema enforced data. So as opposed, well, OpenStreetMap has like a kind of a schema. This is like a hardcore JSON schema, things are enforced. And that I love because roads are like the different classes of roads, they are only that class of roads. It's not called a carriageway, but also a footpath, but also this is the name. We're taking all these OpenStreetMap tags and they all map to this one thing, right? And so and you can actually look at the schema, you can validate against the schema, they validate against the schema. I'm not gonna go into it because schemas are a whole day in and of themselves. I'll just show you the page. So there's all sorts of documentation on the schema. I suggest if you really want to understand the data, you look at the schema because it has all sorts of fun things in it that tell you about what's in the data and what they're using, what's its intended use, I think. The other thing that's probably new to you, unless you were in the last session, is GeoParquet. She did a very nice job of laying out GeoParquet for us. How many of you here have actually used GeoParquet? How many of you used just one single GeoParquet file, but not streamed it? Has anybody, you're all streaming the GeoParquet? This is a way more advanced audience than we thought. All your demos are null. So for you in the recording who hasn't done that, working with GeoParquet files by themselves aren't that new. It's just another spatial data format that we're used to, like put the data together. It's the streaming capabilities of GeoParquet that are the new part. And is there any QGIS maintainers in the room or active members in the, where's Randy? Randy, two things for you. One, GeoParquet for Linux, the flat packs, none of them have Parquet support. I had to, yeah, so that's one. And two, you folks need to start getting it to do, calling it to streaming GeoParquet. Right now, the way you work with the GeoParquet from Overture is you're going to have to define a bounding box, extract that data to a file, and then load that file. If you pointed at the buckets where because how big is the whole database again? How many? It's like 400 gigs, 480 gigs, which you can download if you want, but most people are not going to want to. So they've actually, for each layer, they've broken it up into multiple GeoParquet files. So I can port QGIS at one of those GeoParquet files, but I can't get it to say this whole directory is actually one cohesive GeoParquet. Does that make sense? So if you want to use it in a streaming fashion, you can't use QGIS at this point. But you can through DuckDB, and DuckDB is also a plugin to Postgres. So it's like, DuckDB is like the ultimate foreign data wrapper. It's yet another format, no more tooling, blah. Where is it? There's two canonical publishing locations. One's in S3 and one's in Azure. Can anyone tell me why that's awesome if you use GeoParquet in a streaming format? Okay, all you people who said, oh, I've used the streaming format, do you not know the benefits that you're getting? Yeah, just a weird, everybody's doing this. It's what it actually is that when you do that analysis, it's not happening on your machine, right? When you do, if any of the analysis that you do, when you work with that data, it's actually happening on that machine, on their machine, in here. So let them pay for all that stuff. Don't download all the data. Let them pay for it and just take what you need and do it up there, right? But because one of the great things about unencumbered data is that innovation happens, right? Just like GPS units. The data is also available on source.coop, not all of it, but some of it. Cardo actually has the data in it as well. You can use it directly from Cardo. I tried to capture as many as I could find. I don't know if I caught them all. So for any of you doing that data lake, fancy fun data stuff, Snowflake can actually give you direct access to it, and there's Snowflake queries that will work with it. Google BigQuery has it natively inside. What happened? Oh. Cardo has it. Wherebots. Oh, these are all examples, but it's also, sorry. You can, the Fuse, the Wherebots, the Cardo, and the Felts, they're all using the streaming data when they actually use it in their platform. So they expose it to you, but they're not actually hosting the data. It's not there on their things. These are a whole bunch of examples and demos. I put this together because for this talk, you're obviously going to go home and just you're all OMF all the time. So here's some examples of different ways it can be used on different platforms. Okay? Good? Everybody get what that slide is? I'm not doing any of them. Show it. So I'm going to show you the Explorer. I don't like this tool, but this is the default tool they have now. But I have like 4 bugs into this thing. I'm not going to go on the tour. Skip. So this is their default viewer. I don't know what mapping library it's using under the hoods, and Emacs versus Vim, I'm not caring. So this is, and it actually shows you all the layers. If you click up here, you can see all the layers, right? Divisions, base, map, these are all the ones I told before, and you can turn them on and off. So we'll get rid of natural resources and infrastructure, and that should re-render the map when we click off, except I'm on conference Wi-Fi. So, and you can actually open it up and see which things are inside of it, right? So this is coming from the schema as well, and some of the attribute values. If I can get the Wi-Fi to work, even though I can't get this to work, let's see if I can click on something. I cannot. All right, right now it's doing places, right? Zoom in, that's good, it's cached it. No, I can't get the click to work. No, I think it's places. Sorry, see, I don't like it. Just kidding. This is not their fault, it's the conference Wi-Fi fault. If you click on a feature in any of the layers, once you've identified that's the layer you want to look at, it'll pop up a little box here and show you what we would have called metadata, but it's like it shows you the JSON data that's inside of there. And which is not straight like we do. You have to understand, things are a little bit different. One of the reasons I really don't like this is, what does that tag say? Can people see that? Somebody in the front row, what does it say? Yeah, it says it download visible, right? And so you're like, awesome, I've got my bounding box, that's a bug. I want them to show the bounding box because you have to use it so often. But you click download visible, you're like, yes, I've got my Parquet files. No, it's just the buildings, or is it the places, or it's just one of the layers. So there's a bug in for that too. Don't say download visible if you're not going to download everything that's in there. So I just wanted to show you this if you just want to play around and look at the data, okay? This is not going to be your main tool. I used, let me show you the other tool I used to show you the data. So there's a Python library. How many of you use Python? Yeah, that's what I thought. So all you do is pip install Overture Maps in your VM, unless you're really gung-ho, and then you put it right in the root repository. And then you can just do calls like this, right? You say, I have a bounding box. I want GeoParquet as the output format. I want the building layer. And this is the output file name. So there's two formats it supports, GeoParquet and GeoJSON. But since you're new and hipster and everybody's using GeoParquet in this audience because they're so cool, you're probably going to use GeoParquet, right, rather than GeoJSON. It's a lot smaller and it's just better to work with. So docs on doing it. It's a tool built by Jacob Wasserman. Here's the GitHub repo. I don't know what else to say about it, but this is the main tool that I used to download all the layers around my house, because what does everybody do the first time they use something new? They look at their house. And so I loaded those all up into QGIS. And I think that's the river across from my house. It's not a river, it's more of a creek. But this is the street I live on in here somewhere. I must have saved it at a place where I didn't want to. But here's the thing that's interesting. Almost all of the feature layers come in 3 formats. So even like, let's say we're doing divisions. You're like, oh, divisions, that's going to be polygons. No. Divisions, when you load the division layer, you get the division boundaries as a polygon. You get the division boundaries as a line, if it has a line in it. And you get the division boundaries as a point, if there's point features associated with it. You'll get all of those at once. And then the fun part, if you don't know what you're doing, not that that would ever happen to me, is you might load the division boundaries and you turn it on and it's just a big purple blob. And you're like, what is going on? I'm zoomed into my place. Why is this all this purple? It loads all the hierarchy of the division boundaries as polygons. And they're all in that layer. So you actually have to filter on the layer you want. I think I probably have that in here. I don't know how to change the font size in QGIS, sorry. But let's see. Symbology, source. Where would I put that bounding query? And I don't use QGIS. I'm usually a programming guy. Where do I say, like, only show these things? Right. Sorry? Thank you. That's what I'm doing. Yeah, this is the stuff I would fumble around with for a day until I got used to it again. Right click, ready. There it is. Thank you. Pair programming. Oh, it's not showing it. I actually had to filter the division boundaries because I don't want the United States. The first thing it puts on top is the United States. So you get this big purple blob because the United States covers the entire part of Santa Cruz County, right? And then you have to turn off United States, and then you have to turn off California because you get a big blob of California. And this is not different layers. right? So you can't say, oh, I want USA on the bottom. You have to say, oh, I don't want USA in this layer, and if I want USA on the bottom, I have to add it again and filter just for the USA boundary. So I'm giving you that because that was disconcerting for me when I first opened it. I was like, what? But then if you think about it, it's just basically a PostGIS table where you can have multiple geometry types in a column, which they say never to do, but they do it here, okay? So that's the data. There's houses. Oh, you want to see, houses doesn't have much metadata. This is the roads. These are segments. Those little, can you see the orange dots in the back? Okay. Those orange dots are connectors, right? And so there's all sorts of fun stuff on these. The river, I said you can get metadata. I don't like that they put the information thing all the way over here because I'm always expecting it over here. Here's the metadata on that creek. Oh, I have to select it, sorry. That's all the metadata that you get with it. You can obviously read that, especially in the back. It's got a name field in it, and in the source is waterway, river. There's not much that happens there. The ones that are more interesting are, let's see if I zoom out, if I can, maybe I should just let Jennings do his thing, but I can't give up a microphone once I have it in my hands. So what are these green things? These are division boundaries here. So these are some sort of communities. This is, how many of you have been to Santa Cruz? Oh, the rest of you? Sad, sad life. You can see sea otters if you come visit us. Isn't that like when you were a kid and you watched those movies and those shows, those documentaries, and you saw sea otters, like, whoa, that's the best. If only I could see some of those. Now I'm like, oh, there's a sea otter. Anyway, that's not here nor there. Okay, so here's the boundary stuff. So if I take the boundary stuff and I go back to the information, this is some sort of thing here. Is that a boundary? I think that is, or is it infrastructure? I think it's a boundary. Yeah. Live without a net. Watch Steve fall on his face. It's actually infrastructure. Now that I can actually see the color. So for infrastructure, let's see what this one is. This is a parking lot. Transit parking lot. This is in Scotts Valley, probably. This is where all the, if you want to know where all the Google and Meta and LinkedIn and all those hipster companies with the tons of money to throw at buses, this is where they pick their people up from in Scotts Valley, just so you know. If you ever want to go hit them up for something. So this is, you'll see all sorts of data. I wanted to do a boundary one. The boundary one, you'll see that interesting, it's got like a nested JSON inside of it, right? So, all right, I'm turning it over to Jennings. Jennings is going to do a whole bunch more demos. Is there any questions while we switch laptops? Yeah, go. Yeah, they actually put a lot. The transportation schema is still beta, right? It's not, once it's released, once there's a release, they're doing software principles, right? So like once it's a .o, everything else that's in that lineage is going to have to be compatible with the .o. That's why they have not released the transportation as final yet. This is why I don't mind taking it out. They haven't released it as finals yet because there's still some things that they're still finding out worked out. And you don't understand how complicated you are for dealing with, like the attachment call. Like, do you put node in the end? Is it actually a segment, or is it that node? So they're trying to work through all these things. Or like exit find. Some of the data said that you take this exit, it actually goes to it. Some of it doesn't. It's important that they were the solution. That was so we get to your question, what could just get cooked with is they created software principle within a media release to state backwards compatible. I don't think there's guarantee after if they do another way. But they said, but I haven't considered why I'm fully. Yeah. Was there the data filter? I've seen ferry, when I was seeing the transportation, I saw ferry rack. As long as, I think they're probably getting that with the shoot out. Mac, as long as in there.
Yes.
They, that's all I have.
In terms of the rest of maritime, like maritime boundaries, or what else are you looking for? The transportation theme is coming from OpenStreetMap, and so anything that's going to be an OpenStreetMap regarding transportation, rail, ferry, road, is gonna be there.